Hi, my name is Alex Campbell. Today, I'm going to present a brief history of the U.S. coal industry from its beginnings in the United States to just after the Second World War. I'll begin with an overview of the coal industry's massive growth with the onset of the Industrial Revolution in the U.S. and at the world at large. But before I get started, I'd like to call attention to the conditions of this trade at its start. The picture is a group of miners in a Pennsylvania mine in 1849. This was a very dangerous industry when it began. Due to the lack of any type of modern technology, and the fact that the U.S. as a nation had just won independence, it's impressive to think that an industry such as mining was able to take hold in such adverse conditions. But, as with any U.S. industry, the first significant U.S. coal supply began out of necessity. The War of 1812 saw the U.S. embargoed from their primary coal supply overseas. The young country relied on Britain and other European exporters as their main supply line. As a response to this embargo, settlers in Pittsburgh and in the Richmond, Virginia area began to open mines around 1810. They pioneered the U.S. coal industry. By 1820, coal mines were being dug in the coal-rich Appalachians in Pennsylvania and through the Richmond area. After that, there was no looking back, as the U.S. production skyrocketed with the onset of the Industrial Revolution. In just 40 years, from 1890 to 1950, the U.S. coal industry increased almost 600%. I had mentioned earlier that coal was found in Pennsylvania and in Virginia. While this was true, the production in any eastern state at the beginning of the coal industry was soon surpassed by the discovery of the massive coal reserves along the Appalachian Mountain Range. States like Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio soon became the hubs of the growing U.S. coal industry. As settlers continued to move west, more and more mines were being opened in the Midwest states and even in the Great Plains. There was a large rush to capitalize on the growing market. Coal production was able to increase as much as it did in the 20th century, partially because of its increased usage during the Revolution, but also because U.S. coal became much easier to obtain. There were two types of coal in use in the U.S., anthracite and bituminous coal. The anthracite type was a higher quality, but was more difficult to mine. The early Richmond mines and other eastern mines were primarily anthracite. These mines proved useful during the birth of the coal industry, as this graph depicts, but the vast coal reserves in the Appalachians were found to be bituminous. Easier to mine, more of it, and in a centralized location, bituminous coal quickly took over the U.S. coal market as the primary type of coal being mined. This meant that the mines of Pennsylvania were paramount in supplying the U.S.'s domestic coal. The production from Pennsylvania dwarfed any other coal-producing state at the turn of the 20th century. Pioneers like the Scranton brothers in the East and the hundreds of entrepreneurs in the Pittsburgh region, led by Andrew Mellon, Henry Oliver, and Henry Crick, made Pennsylvania the U.S.'s coal capital. States along the Appalachian Mountain Range and the Midwest were also producing coal, but at nowhere near the volume that Pennsylvania was. So, as the Industrial Revolution moved along, coal became more commonplace as a source of heat and energy in the U.S. This made it an important commodity. As more coal was mined, it became an exponentially greater part of the U.S. capita, following the trend line of its supply. On an interesting historical note, I've noted here that the usage of coal as an energy source in U.S. households. Unknown to me before looking at this data set, the Great Depression played a large part in the usage of coal as an energy supply in the U.S. Up through the 1920s, coal was becoming more and more important and utilized as a household fuel for heat. As the Depression hit the U.S., households could no longer afford to use coal for their heaters and resorted to logs or other more renewable energy sources like newspapers. The U.S. domestic usage of coal never recovered from the Great Depression in households and has seen an increasing drop-off in households ever since, even up to the current day. With that is my brief introduction or reintroduction to the U.S. coal market. These are my sources. Thank you for listening.